Coming up on today's video, crucial injury updates from all 20 Premier League teams, my recommended Game Week 12 wildcard team, what to do with Haaland, and much more. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan and it's time to make those final decisions ahead of Game Week 12. So just as a reminder guys, if you do enjoy these videos each and every week, make sure you do drop a like and do subscribe if you want to make sure you are getting the updates ahead of every game week. But we're going to go through all of the fixtures game by game to see what the injury updates are. And we're going to start off with the early fixture on Saturday, and that is going to be Chelsea versus Leicester. And good news for Palmer as he's been training in full and is available ahead of this week. So big news if you are a Palmer owner or thinking about buying Palmer, this is good for you. Also, Colwill Fofana, Gusto Jorgensen and Lavia are also available following some doubts around their availability. However, Reece James, the classic FPL troll, has picked up yet a new injury and is going to be out for this week. So avoid Reece James. For Leicester, Fatawu has unfortunately suffered an ACL injury. He's going to be out for the season. Jamie Vardy is in partial training due to a back issue that he has. We're not sure if he's going to be available to play. And Buonanotte is suspended after accumulating 5 yellow cards. For Arsenal, possibly the big one of the week, and Ben White will be out for months following knee surgery. So Jurrien Timber is probably going to be playing most games in the right back position. Tomiyasu still not available. Thomas Partey, in fairness, could occasionally play at right back, but in general, Timber is looking like a better pick, but Ben White is off the cards right now. Saka and Rice have completed partial training sessions today. I know that's not the update we wanted from Saka, but honestly, what did you expect from Mikel Arteta? He's never going to give us all of the exact information. All we know is that they have partially trained today ahead of tomorrow's fixture. Does that mean they're going to be available or not? I'll leave that for you to decide. It's all about interpretation with Mikel Arteta. Unfortunately, he's just useless when it comes to FPL. However, he did provide a solid update on Calafiori, who has been in full training and is available. So the left back position does seem to be sewn up by Calafiori. As for Nottingham Forest, more negative news, I guess, from them. Anderson and Aina have small doubts due to knocks. They're only small doubts, however, so I do expect them to play, but we're not 100% sure on these guys. Sosa is returning late from international duty, and Danilo and Sangare are still out long term. For Aston Villa, Konsa and Onana are out for Game Week 12, but will be back very soon. And Ramsey and Kamara are also out. Both of these players have hamstring injury. So this does weaken the Aston Villa defence ahead of this match against Crystal Palace. Barclay, Cash, Powell, Matson, they have all returned to training, however. But even though it looks bad from a defensive point of view for Aston Villa, what we do know is that Eze is going to be out for Game Week 12. So is Kamada due to suspension. Decore, Lerma and Hughes are available again, but we have no update on Wharton or Chadi Riyad. So Palace still with a few injury problems in their squad. For Bournemouth, Semenyo and Kirkes have trained and are available for Game Week 12. Good news on those very popular FPL assets. Araujo, Scott and Sinistera are out with long-term injuries, and Christie is suspended following yellow card accumulation. Does that impact Bournemouth's defence a little bit? Maybe, but not massively. For Brighton, however, Dunk is back in training. He's very close to being available, so there is a good chance he does play in Game Week 12, but we don't know for sure. Hinchelwood is also going to have a late assessment this week. And as for Milner and Kadioglu, these are the only noteworthy confirmed absentees for Brighton. Everyone else looks pretty likely to be available for the fixture against Bournemouth. That's including players like Welbeck and João Pedro, who I know a lot of you guys are looking at for this game week. For Everton, McNeil has been back in training all week, so presumably he is going to be available. Branthwaite has returned to training more recently, but apparently he should be okay to play. Broja, Chamiti, Coleman, Broja, I already said Broja, Garner and Irak Bunam are out for this game week. But for Brentford, well, good news here. Mbeumo, Wissa, Pinnock, all expected to be available following some doubts over the international break for these players. However, be aware, Igor Thiago will be in the squad this weekend. He's been playing some behind closed doors friendly games for Brentford, and he is really seen as the central striker that Brentford want to move forward with. So we could see Wissa moving to a wing position fairly soon. Aja De Silva, Henry, Hickey, all still out for Brentford. For Fulham, Lukic is available following a shoulder injury, but Fulham cannot regain their fully fit status as Reed needs surgery on his knee. He's going to be out for 5 or more weeks. And one more warning with Fulham, Raul Jimenez played 89 minutes for Mexico on Wednesday. Kind of the fixture was at 2:30 UK time on Wednesday AM. So ended quite late. Presumably Raul Jimenez only returning to England yesterday, which means maybe a limited amount of time for training for him before playing against Wolves this game week. So we may see a reduction of Raul's minutes this game week. Just a warning for you guys, but he is available. It's not an injury concern. It is just a little warning for you guys. As for Wolves, Santiago Bueno has trained. He's available. He's still awaiting minutes, having been back in training for quite some time now. He's been back for weeks in training. Still haven't seen a start from him. And Gonzalez, Kalajdzic, Lima, Mosquera and Traore are all out for Wolves. For Manchester City, they have picked up a new injury. Kovacic is going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks. We don't know exactly what that is, or I haven't seen exactly what the injury is. Maybe some Man City fans may have more information about specifically what the injury is, but we know he's going to be out for several weeks, which means multiple game weeks in terms of FPL. So Man City may be getting weaker in the kind of defensive midfield areas. No Rodri, now no Kovacic, could spell a few problems here. Akanji, Ake and Stones have been back in training, however, so that is good news in the centre-back department for Man City. Doku is expected to remain out, having not been seen in training. I think everyone else looks pretty positive, though. As for Spurs, Van de Ven is still a few weeks away from a return. Romero is also out this week. He picked up a little minor injury over the international break. He could be back for game week 13, however. Van de Ven a little bit longer. Bentancur is also going to serve the first game of a 7-match ban, so a few missing players for Spurs against Man City. Certainly, if you're a Haaland owner, then this could be positive news in general because Spurs are missing their 2 main centre-backs. They're going to be playing with a pretty weak central defensive area, and I think certain Man City players may be able to capitalise on that. Spurs, not the best defence in the league anyway, but they're okay. But without these defenders, they are going to be a lot worse. For Southampton, another big opportunity if you own any Liverpool players, because Bednarek and Ramsdale are going to be out for a number of weeks following injury. So 2 key defensive players for Southampton not going to be available. Flynn Downs' minutes are also going to be managed following a knee injury, and Bazunu, Smallbone and Stewart are still out long term. And how about Liverpool? Well, we've also got some pretty negative news from Liverpool as well. Alisson will miss game week 12 as he's not quite ready following his hamstring injury that he has been nursing. He could be back for game week 13, but as of right now, we're not too sure about Alisson. Certainly not game week 12, and this does damage Liverpool's defensive opportunities, I suppose. Elliott, good news there. He is back in full training and could get some minutes. However, Trent, Jota, Chiesa have not been training. Trent seems to be the closest to a return. He could be back in game week 13, but game week 12 is going to come too soon for Trent Alexander-Arnold and Alisson. So you may have some decisions to make there regarding transfers if you do own these Liverpool players. For Ipswich, Hurst will be out for weeks following a knee injury. I think that really improves the minutes potential of a player like Delap. So Delap owners, I guess that's kind of a good thing. Greaves and Taylor, they're back in trading, presumably available. Broadhead, Burns, Phillips are doubts, however. These guys have minor injuries. As for Manchester United, not too much team news coming from the press conference today, as it is going to be Amorim's first game in charge for Manchester United, but we can still share some information based on what we do know. And what we know is Casemiro, Diallo, Mainu, Malacia, Shaw and Yoro have all been back in full training over the international break, which is going to be a major boost for Manchester United. Martinez and Lindelof are doubts, having dropped out of their international squad, but nothing confirmed on them. Maguire is the only player who we think is going to be confirmed out for Manchester United. United. And one more note on Man United, I've seen a lot of fans, not just Manchester United fans, but also Sporting fans from Amorim's time there, suggesting rotation is going to happen. It's very difficult to predict who is going to be starting for Man United. Even players like Mazraoui, who you might think are safe, he is not necessarily safe. Neither is Haaland, Garnacho, Rashford. There is a lot of big doubts around who is going to play for Manchester United in the upcoming game week. So maybe try and be patient on Man United. I know a lot of people are excited about them, but Bruno is probably the only secure player there. Maybe De Ligt as well if you fancy a defender. But we've got to move on to the final fixture, the Monday fixture for game week 12. And that's going to be Newcastle versus West Ham. And we have got some negative news from Newcastle. Kraft has picked up a collarbone injury. He's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. Trippier and Wilson are close, but game week 12 is going to be a little bit too soon for them. Burn is also suspended following yellow card accumulation. So there's some doubts around who is going to be playing in the central defensive areas for Newcastle. They're not going to be at full strength, but pretty close at least. West Ham, however, Fulkrug still out. He's been out forever. There is apparently some other unspecified doubts in the squad, but Fulkrug is the only confirmed player out through injury. Kudus is still suspended. This is his second to last game of suspension. He'll be back in game week 14 and could be an interesting FPL punt from that point. Alvarez returns following suspension, and that concludes all of our team news, but there is so much more to talk about. Looking through some of the fixtures for game week 12, and I think most of the big teams should win this week. Arsenal's, Liverpool's, Man City's, Chelsea, I think they'll all win their games. However, there are some controversial games. I do think Bournemouth and Brighton, there could be a draw there. Same with Everton versus Brentford. Can see that one being fairly low scoring. Fulham should beat Wolves, and aside from that, like I say, Man United, first game under Amorim, expect them to beat Ipswich. These are my predictions for the win, loses, and the draws for this game week. But if you think you can predict better than me, then join my sleeper league. We are running this prediction league and giving away huge prizes every single month. Hundreds of pounds of prizes every month. Thousands of pounds worth of prizes throughout the year. So what are you waiting for? It is 100% free. Check out the link in the description and have a practice this week ready for the December competition, which are going to be starting very, very soon. You guys are going to be winning some big prizes if you get involved. Link in the description right now. Right, so on with some other topics. First of all, let's look at the clean sheet odds. This might help you pick out which defenders and goalkeepers to play for game week 12. And it's Arsenal. It's all about Arsenal. They've got some great clean sheet odds, not just this game week, but actually for a lot of future game weeks as well. If you do like this kind of thing, 50% chance of a clean sheet at home against Forest is very nice indeed. Liverpool are second best here with a 42% chance of a clean sheet against Southampton. And the other noteworthy teams with likely clean sheets this week are Aston Villa, Newcastle, Fulham, Chelsea, and Manchester United. So could be worth going there. Unfortunately, the newly promoted teams don't have too much of a good clean sheet chance. In fact, looking at the bottom of the clean sheet table, very, very few clean sheets seem to be on offer here. Wolves, Palace, Ipswich, Forest, West Ham, Leicester, Spurs, Southampton. If you've got players from these teams, I would not recommend playing the defenders from these teams, but maybe the attackers might be a little bit better. Looking at the goal scorer odds, and yeah, of course, it is Haaland, the most likely player to score this game week. He has got a 0.94 projected goals against Spurs, which is obviously very impressive. But we've got joint place for second. Both Salah and Isak each have 0.8 projected goals ahead of their fixtures against Southampton and West Ham. So very, very nice indeed there. Palmer and Jackson looking pretty good here against Leicester. Good chance of scoring. Other noteworthy players include Watkins, Haaland, presuming he starts, Evanilson, and Raul Jimenez. But there are a few noteworthy players not in the top end of the goal scorer odds. Players like Wolves assets, these Brentford assets as well. We're not really seeing too many of these players on this list for high goal scoring probabilities this week. So just a word of warning there. Rodgers not on this list either. Yeah, so just a word of warning there for you guys. There are a lot of big players who aren't projected too many goals this game week, but there are also a lot of great opportunities this week, and hopefully you guys can get on them. I made a thing. Yes, I made a new graphic today. This took a little while to make, but here we are. And I wanted to really try and visualize the fixture congestion that we're about to see. As we know, the December period in particular is it's jam-packed full of football fixtures, and some teams will be suffering from that more than others, particularly those teams playing in Europe, but also those teams playing in the League Cup. So this is the schedule. What I've done is I've organized it by weekend and midweek games. There's a slight drift as we get to 18 and 19, game weeks 18 and 19, but in general, what we can see is Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, and Spurs have really congested fixtures. Then we've got teams like Aston Villa and Man City who are pretty congested, and then we have actually a lot of teams here that look pretty good. They're actually not much congestion at all. No midweek games outside of game week 14 and game week 18, which are the midweek Premier League game weeks. But if you are picking rotation players or players who are prone to the occasional rotation, the players who are, I don't know, just the non-key players from their teams, you are going to be taking a risk over this period of time. And I think it's well worth having a look at. For example, a player I'm looking at right now is Lucas Digne. Lucas Digne is obviously a player who could rotate with Maatsen in the midweek games, and there are a few midweek games for him. So I'm not expecting Digne to play every single game. We have other players, like if you're going for Chelsea players, for example, it's a little bit more complicated because they seemingly have an entirely different squad for Europe. But in the midweek games, could we see Jackson rotated occasionally? Could we see Neto or Madueke occasionally dropping out of the team? I think it's very possible during some of these midweek games. So a word of warning for players like that. Liverpool attackers outside of Salah, going to be very difficult. Manchester United have a jam-packed fixture schedule as well, as do Spurs. So just a big warning there. I don't want to tell you guys what to do, but I just want to put the information out there. On the other hand, there are a lot of teams that actually, it's looking pretty good. So Brighton, for example, players like João Pedro and Welbeck, if they had midweek games for Europe and for the Cup, I would be worried about these kind of players. But because Brighton have one of the more clear schedules for FPL, for the Premier League, actually, I don't think these players are so bad to go for. Similar to Newcastle, not looking too bad for these kind of teams. So there are genuinely, Fulham as well, there are genuinely a lot of teams here that have pretty clear schedules and actually won't have too much rotation. But certainly the bigger teams, unless you're picking their talismans, you know, Salah, Saka, Palmer, Bruno Fernandes, you have to be aware that there may be a bit of rotation, and you can kind of gather from this graphic when that is more likely to be based on the fixtures that they have, based on the congestion and where it is. So there you go, guys. Use this graphic at your own leisure. Feel free to take a screenshot, and hopefully it's useful for making some of those decisions. But in general, safe players are king at this time of the FPL season because of that potential rotation. That might mean going for some slightly more boring picks, but that just might be the way we have to do it. One more player I might be worth mentioning actually is Watkins. With Aston Villa, pretty jam-packed schedule up until around game week 17. So therefore, could we see Watkins benched for Duran maybe in a midweek game? Could that be in, game week 14 or 15, where really Aston Villa have their two best fixtures? I think it's possible that Watkins could see reduced minutes over that period. So there you go, guys. Let's move on, because I made another graphic. I make a lot of graphics. So this is my captain matrix for the upcoming game weeks. We've got 8 game weeks ahead here. And what I wanted to show is the 3 players I believe to be the best / most sensible captains for each game week from 12 until 19. And you can see here, it really is dominated by Salah, Haaland and Palmer. And in general, I think if you have Palmer, you've covered a lot of these game weeks for captaincy, and then outside of that, just going for one of Salah or Haaland, and you're going to have a captain for each game week. Obviously, no problem with having all three as well. That's definitely viable. One thing I noticed is players like Saka and Son not appearing very much here on the captain matrix, so I don't think they are worth captaining very often. But the final thing I wanted to note, and you guys can look through this graphic, you can pause the video, whatever you want to do if you want to have a full look at this. But one thing I did want to mention is that there are 3 game weeks where I think there is big opportunities to go for a differential captain, because there's no standout captain in game week 13, game week 15, or game week 17. So we've got players like Wissa in 13, Watkins in 15, Isak in 17, which I think are pretty solid. But I wanted to list some of the potential, real differential captains you could go for during these game weeks as well. So in game week 13, Mbeumo, Fernandes, Saka, and Wood could be really interesting captains if you want to go a little bit different. For game week 15, Isak, Cunha, João Pedro, and Saka look like interesting captains there. And game week 17, Fernandes, Raul Jimenez, Cunha, and João Pedro all look nice there. So yeah, let me know what you think. I like going for a differential captain, but only when there's a good opportunity. And I really do believe there are these 3 good opportunities to go different on your captain within the next several weeks. So yeah, let's see how many people go different. I think there's some opportunities here. Okay, let's discuss Haaland. And I think, some people are asking, should I sell Haaland? Should I keep him? And given that Spurs are missing their 2 centre-backs this game week, selling Haaland, if you do still have him, is a little bit dangerous. I think it is, despite the form, I still think it is a little bit dangerous. And if you are selling Haaland, I would want to try and make sure that you're doing it for a very, very good reason. So it has to be under pretty specific circumstances. So, players to sell. If you are selling Haaland as a forward, I would definitely make it a double transfer. There is no way I would make a Haaland out to a different player without reinvesting the money you've saved from selling Haaland. It doesn't make any sense. Haaland, despite his price tag, is still probably the best asset in FPL. So making a straight swap is not worth it. It has to be a multiple transfers to make it worthwhile. So if you are selling Haaland, I would also sell a midfielder, but only a midfielder that you really don't want in your FPL team. So some examples could be Johnson, Maddison, McNeil, Luis Diaz, Eze, Winks, Buonanotte, Kulusevski, Onana, Dibbling. If you have these kind of players as well as Haaland, it might be worth making a double switch. I wouldn't include Mbeumo, Semenyo, and Rodgers in this category, because I think Mbeumo, Semenyo, and Rodgers are all very solid FPL assets, and by selling them, you might not improve your team too much. Now let's talk about players to buy. Now, first of all, this isn't in order on the graphic, but I would only sell Haaland if I am replacing a midfielder with Salah or Palmer. If you don't have Salah or Palmer, that is a reason to get Haaland. Doesn't matter which one it is, you need both, I would say, if you are selling Haaland. But also, I would only bring in a really good forward. So Isak, Jackson, Havertz, Watkins, and maybe João Pedro would be the forwards I'd be looking at getting as a replacement for Haaland, as well as that midfield transfer. But really, it's only Isak. Isak is the only one I would feel confident in making that double transfer for. But I definitely appreciate the potential of these other players. If you are selling Haaland, particularly for a -4, you need to be bringing in 2 very strong players to make it worthwhile. You need to really improve your squad if you are selling Haaland. Just doing it because you don't like Haaland anymore, you just will sell him for anyone. Not worth it, in my opinion. Make it worthwhile. Get a Salah, get a Palmer, and replace a poor midfielder with a strong forward. That is how I would do that. So I made this wildcard draft today, and there are a couple of changes from my wildcard team, which I posted in a video yesterday. And I think this is a slightly modified, slightly safer version of my own wildcard team. So if I was to recommend a wildcard to you guys, where it's slightly safer, not not taking as many risks. I like to take a couple of risks here and there. This is what I'd be looking at doing. So Verbruggen in goal, a defense of Gabriel, Konate and Lewis Hall, who will rotate quite nicely with a Ryan Aït-Nouri on the bench. Midfield will be Salah, Palmer, Saka and Mbeumo with Rodgers on the bench. Up front, Isak, Cunha and João Pedro. We've also got Fabianski and Burgess on the bench, who will most likely stay there pretty much every single game week. Now, this is quite a nice, safe wildcard team that costs just 101 million. If you have a little bit more budget to play around with, then there's no problem with going for some upgrades. The first upgrade I would probably make would be Verbruggen to Raya if you have really nice team value. That could work out quite well indeed. A player you could consider sacrificing is maybe Cunha, but I think Cunha is probably a safe pick to have in your FPL team right now. So that is a nice, safe wildcard draft for you guys to use. Maybe use it as a template, as a base for making your own teams yourselves. And finally, looking at the top predicted points according to Fantasy Football Hub, who are running a month for 30 days free. Full access to Hub. We have got a link in the description for that as well if you'd like to try it out. But the highest predicted points according to the Hub algorithm, we see Salah number 1, 8 predicted points there. Haaland in second place with 7.7 predicted points, so actually reasonably close. After that, Isak at 6.8, and yeah, big gap after that to Palmer and Watkins. But in fairness, Palmer is still flagged, which does impact his predicted points. I do expect once Palmer's flag is removed over the next few hours that he will jump ahead of Isak in the pecking order for predicted points for game week 12. So if you're thinking about captains this week, I think Salah is the obvious guy. If not, Haaland and Palmer would be where I'd be looking to go for next, and Isak as a really outside shot if you really want to go different. But it's going to be a Salah, Haaland, Palmer week for captain, I think. But that pretty much wraps things up for today. Loads of information in this video, I know. But if you did enjoy, make sure you do drop a like. Do subscribe if you're new around here as well. Massively appreciated. And do check out another video if you'd like to. Plenty more on the FPL Mate channel for Game Week 12. But I'll see you tomorrow for a deadline stream, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.